Hi, this is Dale Crosby from Training Beyond Accounting. Welcome to our short, sharp session today on the 5 steps to improve your graduates' efficiency. I'll be presenting this session together with Dorothy Crosby. We're both business consultants and trainers with Business Aptitude and Training Beyond Accounting. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thanks, Dale. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
I'd like to thank the audience who've registered for this program today, both listening to the live session and also the recorded session. We will be sending a link to the recording following the live session to all registrants, and you should have already received a copy of the PowerPoint slides and also a short survey that you can conduct as a manager or with your graduates to help give you a feeling for their capabilities and their level of efficiency. Just a quick reminder as well that you do have the opportunity to ask questions as this session proceeds. So if you'd like to grab your keyboard, just type in the name of your firm or the city you're from into the keyboard, and don't hesitate to ask questions as we run through this short, sharp session.
Well, I'd like to know why they're all here today. Obviously, well, I'm assuming that because they have grads on their team and they'd like to just maximise the efficiency and maximise the performance of these grads, and they want to know how to do that.
Yeah, and we've had over 500 graduates through our online graduate development program over the last 3 years through 8 previous times that we've run the program. So we've got a wealth of experience in talking with graduates and managers about what's important to them, what the challenges they've got, and what we can do to address those challenges to make them more efficient. So from an external perspective, I think we can add a lot of feedback. Some key challenges that have come out of our online sessions to date are identified here, and obviously expanding accounting knowledge and skills is applicable, I would hope, to 100% of graduates. I've got 95% here that have said that it is, but certainly 100%. Time management, prioritisation skills, critically important, particularly I find when we've got graduates walking into a professional service environment having never worked in that sort of environment before, and often the feedback we get is from graduates is, well, I was very organised at uni, I really got through all my subjects and managed to organise myself, but working in a professional service environment is completely different. It's a reactive environment, and as a graduate I really struggle to take control of my environment and my workload.
Well, it's full on. It's constant. It's not like when they're studying where they can just, plan, and there's nothing else being thrown their way, and there's nothing urgent or unforeseen being thrown their way. So it is quite different.
Yes, and interestingly enough, of these challenges that we got from graduates, we also asked the same question of managers and partners and principals when we ran our leadership program, and the challenges that graduates have are pretty much the challenges that managers say that graduates have. So they're both in complete agreement.
Yep.
So from an external perspective, I often wonder, where's the disconnect? Why do, as managers, we really struggle to engage graduates? Why do we get frustrated with their development when we've got graduates saying the same thing, that often they're frustrated because they don't feel as though they're getting perhaps the level of coaching and support or the opportunity or the encouragement they need to do their job effectively?
Dale, can I just take a few minutes to talk about that? Because I remember so very clearly being a graduate in a very large international accounting firm back in the early 80s, and I remember that I was quite clueless in all of these areas. I had the technical sort of training, but I really didn't know how to handle myself with these challenges. And when, we've been working with accounting firms for 15 years in helping them to implement change in their firms, and what we discovered and what I'm particularly passionate about is arming grads particularly with the skills, with strategies, with the training to be able to meet these challenges. Because when we were walking into firms over the years, we would get taken aside by the grads saying, look, I need your help too because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to meet my productivity target. I don't know how to work effectively with my manager. I don't know how to manage my job budget or manage my time. So you and I got together and we've written a whole lot of different material, and including today's session, to help managers with these challenges, to help coach and mentor their grads and manage their grads through these challenges, and then everybody wins, because the grads, that's what they want. They want that And we as managers don't realise what support that they need from us.
And I think we struggle to give people responsibility because we can see the weaknesses, we can see that they're still learning, and we're not sure how much responsibility to give, what's going to fall between the cracks if we do start giving responsibility. And the solution always is to manage that process very well, develop very clearly defined systems and processes, make sure that there's clear communication and give real feedback. It's interesting that graduates say that producing accurate accounts is important. They want to manage the expectations of senior staff. They really want less need for feedback from their manager. They want to deal more with clients, and they want to be able to budget for larger client jobs. So they want to do all these things, but they're not able to. Often
and it frustrates them as well.
It frustrates them, and it does take time. The quickest way to make this process work quickly and more efficiently is to provide the coaching and support and training and give clear direction in relation to these things.
So let's get started.
So 5 key steps to increase the efficiency of our graduates, and we're going to go through these one at a time. They seem fairly obvious, but often the challenge we find in firms is they're not being implemented in a consistent, coordinated, formal fashion. Ensure your graduates understand scope of work and what to do when there's an issue. Do they really understand? Often managers will complain to me that the graduate just ploughed ahead with the job, took twice as long as it was required, and didn't actually come back to me to talk about the issues and challenges until it was too late. And now we've got to fix up all the problems that we encountered at the beginning. So what's going on in that communication?
Okay, so we have to understand, and the kinds of problems that I've encountered in working with accounting firms in this area, Dale, is that we don't get just one manager or one partner giving work to a grad. We've got all different levels of manager and partner and different approaches giving work to grads. And I think that the first thing we need to do is think about the way that we're communicating the scope of work, because we've found ourselves that often, even at manager or partner level, the scope of work is a bit fuzzy. So we have to make sure that everybody who is in a position to be giving work to a grad can explain the exact specific scope of work. What is included in what we're doing? What's not included? How do they identify it? Give them some hints on how to identify it. What do they do about it if there is an issue? Do they just put their head down and keep going, which, I know that it might be to us explaining the obvious, but they don't know. Of course they're not going to be able to look out for what the scope of work is and when we've got scope creep if we don't talk to them specifically about each and every client. They're not going to know what to do about it if we don't tell them what to do about it.
Yeah, so that's pretty important. And one thing we tell graduates is to really talk with your manager about scope of work and what it means. Increasingly with firms taking on more advisory work now, there's real need for firms to define specifically what work they're providing to clients. And that also means it's easy to go back to our grads who are doing the work and say, this is what's included, this is what's excluded. Please let me know if there's anything outside the ordinary, particularly when they're involved in the calling in of work.
And we know we've been successful when we get to the point where our grads are coming to us and asking us, hey John, what's the scope of work on this job? Or hey John, I think we've got scope creep here, specifically in these areas. Then we've really done our job well.
Some of the key challenges that grads will often say to us, it's really difficult when I haven't done this client's work in the past, and of course it is. And we'll all have the anecdote that, or we all understand from experience, that it probably takes 6 or 12 months for grads to really understand the work they're doing, and it's probably the second time around in doing the work that they really start to get that traction.
Yep.
But there are things that they can do in considering the work as they start it, not to rush through the work, but to take some time and explore what's involved, to look at previous year's work papers. Yes, they should be doing it. Often they're not, because they're so frantic trying to get the work done that they don't take the time to plan up properly. And a little bit of time spent planning up front is going to make a huge difference to the time cost at the end of the day.
And what we need to do is we need, as a manager, to give them a rundown on the client's job. This is ABC Proprietary Limited. They have these particular entities. This is what we're trying to achieve. This is what they do, what their business does. These are the connected entities. Let's give them a bit of an overview so that they have a better idea of the client that they're working on.
Grads will also say, I simply don't know what I don't know in relation to this work. And that's part of the development of knowledge and capability. We all need to recognise that, and I think it's important to have that conversation with our young staff. We need to manage their expectations, and we need to also be sure that they understand that initially they will be unaware of getting it wrong. Then they give in some feedback and they realise they've got it wrong. They start getting it right, and then they start to get it right intuitively. So that's the process we all go through when we're developing skills and capabilities. We should be having that conversation with our younger staff so that they understand the process, so that they can manage our expectations as well more appropriately. So the second step in the 5-step process, establish clear time cost budgets and WIP monitoring process. Again, that sounds obvious. Probably half the audience is saying, well, I already know that, but they're not doing it.
Well, we've got to be focused on it constantly and consistently. What I remember working with one firm, Dale in particular, and I worked with the entire accounting team from partners, managers, assistant managers down to grads. And what we did was we focused on all of these areas, and by the time we came to the end of the project, which took about 4 months to really get them to change behaviour and start to think about what they're doing in these areas and making sure that they're focusing on these areas constantly and consistently, we started off in a position with this firm where they were their write-offs were about 38%, and we got them down to 5% in that 4-month period. By the end of that project, by doing all of these things, what happened was the grads, the first step was they started to go to their manager or the partner and ask for a job budget before they started working on the job, because I drilled it into them so heavily that, you know, they were starting to really take ownership and challenge their manager and say, I'm sorry, I'm not working on this job until you give me a job budget.
I think there's a really good point in that. Challenge your manager, because
Absolutely.
In talking to the graduates that are enrolled in our programs, that's probably a core message that comes throughout the programs, that they've got to take responsibility for their work and relationships.
Yep.
And they shouldn't expect to be spoon-fed. They should be challenging the people around them. And if they're not getting the information that they need, then go and talk to their manager and explain the process.
Absolutely. But with this particular firm, Dale, by the end of the process, by the end of that time, the grads had progressed to preparing job budgets in a lot of cases, and in fact they were challenging their managers when they were preparing a job budget and they could see that the job couldn't be done for the fee. They'd start to challenge their manager, which is a great thing, I think, because that shows that they're taking ownership of that whole part of their responsibility, and they're engaged.
So we've got these documented processes, and our graduates clearly understand each part of the process. What happens when the graduate says, I simply can't meet the firm's with expectations? Because again, we have that feedback that the manager says, well, we've got a time cost budget of 6 hours, and the graduate says, well, I've just worked it out, it's going to take me 10 hours. What's the solution? I need to start working through the process and identify, both in the short term and the long term, where efficiencies are going to be gained. It's also probably unrealistic to expect a new graduate to be able to do work at the same speed and efficiency as somebody that's a little more experienced.
Well, that's where we need to help them map the road that they're going to take between A and B, so that they're taking the shortest possible route from the start of the job to the part that they need to complete. And sometimes we just need to make sure that they've got documented procedures to support them. They've got a step-by-step plan of attack, and they know when they are in trouble and when they're off track, and they know that they can come and see you.
So having clear structures and processes in place up front really adds value at the end of the day, and it's often a case of having those processes really clearly defined as we start the process. For a lot of graduates, it's a case of saying, I just focus on getting the job done, I've got no control over the WIP, and that probably comes back to our previous discussion, that if they're involved in trying to understand what's involved in completing the job and start to produce a time cost budget, so they take some responsibility for it, then they're more likely to take some ownership. They're more likely to go back to the people around them and say, I've got some problems early on in the process rather than after the job is finished. Too often it's easy for all of us just to plough through the work because we know there's a deadline, and it takes twice as long as it should take, even though there is a deadline, because there's been relatively little planning up front.
Yeah, I agree. And just a little hint to those of you who are managers and managing grads in the audience, make sure you spell out very clearly to your grad when you are giving them instructions and when you are telling them how you want a particular job done, that you're welcome, they're welcome to make suggestions, but please come and discuss those suggestions for doing that work differently first, because there is a tendency among grads sometimes to plough in and think, oh, I can do this more efficiently. So then we need to discuss that, because sometimes it's not more efficient and we take the wrong road.
Sometimes it's not, but sometimes
it is, but we need to talk about it first before we, so make it clear that that's what has to happen.
I know through our experience, having groups of graduates go through an online graduate development program, often we'll have feedback from them that as a result of the program, they're actually making presentations to the Board of Management about things that need to change in the practice so that they can take more control of their work environment. Isn't that a fantastic?
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Fantastic outcome, and giving people a sense of responsibility for getting things done more efficiently.
Absolutely.
So often they've got the ideas and the solutions, we just don't really give them the opportunity.
And some of the best solutions come from the younger members of the team, because they've got no preconceptions.
No, that's right. Step 3 of our 5-step process, train your graduates in how to manage their time and priorities. So it's probably caught up in all of the things we're already talking about. Time and task management is absolutely paramount at every level in a professional service business. It can be such a reactive environment, and if we don't take control at every level, then it becomes proactive. Now, I have to say, without being critical of anybody, often it's the managers that are responsible for this as much as the graduates. If the managers aren't planning their week, aren't planning workflow and giving the graduates the opportunity to take control, then it can be difficult. But it's a two-way process.
Well, one of the most effective things that we've introduced to firms, Dale, is to implement a weekly planner. And I did this with one firm many years ago, and I was actually quite surprised at the resistance that I got from that. So what happened was we decided it was quite a large team, so I suggested very strongly that we should implement a weekly planner system for all the grads, so that we could manage the work coming through to the managers or the seniors or the partners who were reviewing and then finishing off the work and reviewing it and finalising it. Because what tends to happen, and I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but what does tend to happen is when we're really busy, we give the work to the graduates, and then for some reason it's not finished by Tuesday, when we need to pick up that work and finish it off and then finalise it, and we're not aware of it until Tuesday. So what managers do is they pick it up, they finish off the tasks and the work that the grad hasn't been able to finish by the time that the manager needs to pick it up, and that's really not very efficient. So what we did was, with this planning system, and we put a weekly planner in place, and we were able to then manage the job flow so that the jobs that needed to be done for a manager to pick those up by Tuesday or Wednesday, for example, were done, and they were given priority. And there was one central person who managed that workflow for the grads.
And in fact, that central person, I remember, was an intermediate accountant. It wasn't a manager.
She did an awesome job.
She did a fantastic job, an intermediate accountant who was able just to manage the flow of work and act as a conduit between the graduates and the managers.
Yes.
And that applied throughout the whole firm, even in a term with different teams.
And that actually resulted in the monthly invoicing increasing by 20% in that firm.
So structure and support and process is really important. So looking at some of the challenges that we graduates tell us that are real issues, I'm continually interrupted by requests and your priorities.
With that.
Yep.
Sorry, with that, look, I can relate to that. I used to be a grad, and I tried to manage my team, and when I was working in an accounting firm and I had grads working for me, we need to be mindful that they can't chop and change the way we can, because they don't have the experience. So it's really important to have some sort of process that you and your grads agree to manage those interruptions. Now, it might be that you put aside all the work that you want to give to a grad throughout the day. As you find tasks, or as you come across tasks that you can delegate, you put them in a particular tray, and then at a particular time, once the grad's finished doing whatever it is that they're doing, you can sit down together and go through and explain some of those tasks and hand them over, because it's really difficult. I remember so clearly being a grad, and you just can't chop and change. You haven't got that experience. You haven't got that ability to manage all these different things happening at once. One of the things that I do with my team is I set aside, I'll say, look guys, I'll let you do your work, but what time can we sit down together for me to delegate some smaller tasks to you, and I just, we just have some time together where you can help me get some stuff out of the way, and we'll agree on a time. We'll sit down for half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the afternoon. So work out a process.
Yep. The other challenge in this particular area that often we come across, I'm not told what I'll be doing a week ahead. The next job is given as the last is finished, and it comes back to planning. Dorothy, just a quick comment or question from Kerry. I've tried to implement weekly planners, but everyone is resisting. What am I doing wrong? But I think we need to go, in that particular case, of course it's difficult to answer the question without understanding the real issue, and probably talking to the graduates will give me that answer, but I suspect a lot of it probably goes back to initial engagement. Are we actually explaining to our graduates why we're doing what we're doing? What are the roadblocks that they see? I always recall my discussions with Toda Huss, who says when you've got an issue like this, always refer it back to the people that are involved in trying to implement the solution. In other words, you say to them, well, we've implemented this process for such and such. I can see you're having challenges. What are the challenges you've got and why? What can we do to improve the situation? Put it back on them. Put it back on the graduates. As a manager, don't believe that you've got to come up with the solution.
And Kerry, can I just share with you the resistance that I experienced in implementing this weekly planner with the firm that I was talking about a minute ago? It got to a point, the managers were resisting. The managers were resisting and saying, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to just let the grad finish the job if it's not ready by the time I need to pick it up. I'll do whatever I need to do, whatever the grad hasn't done to finish the job. I can't wait for it. And in fact, I was called into a meeting by the senior partner and managers. I think there were about 12 that called me into a meeting, and even the senior partner was towering over me, and this is a firm that I'd worked with for about 9 years, and he was saying, now Dorothy, do you really think that this is the best thing to do? And I nearly caved myself, but it took about 3 months of persistence and quiet resolution of, no, this is what we're going to do. Let's manage the process. Let's do this. So sometimes it's just a matter of being persistent and consistent to show people, to take them through the sort of the dark cave to get to the other side where it is going to be a lot better and a lot easier. So sometimes we just have to persist.
Yep, and do it in a collaborative way rather than giving directions.
Of course.
So involve people. I think it's really important. Step 4 of our 5-step process, help your graduates take control of communication with clients. Now, of course, there's a caveat on this. A brand new graduate is obviously going to have a lot less engagement with clients than a more experienced graduate. But our experience in talking with grads throughout our online development program is that as they start to get experience, they actually want to get more engaged with clients. They understand that there's a fine line between following up queries and actually giving technical advice, and that needs to be communicated. But there's a great opportunity for our graduates to start getting more confidence with both verbal and written communication through taking some of the load off managers and following up clients.
And even if they don't yet have direct communication with clients, it's never too early to train and mentor your grads into how to communicate with clients. What are the rules of engagement with your clients? How do you conduct yourself? You really need to start that on day one. So make sure that they understand how we interact with our clients, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and show them by example. Show them when you're writing an email to a client, explain to them, because it's never too early to get them into these good habits.
Just quickly coming back to the other comment about weekly planners, Kerry's also followed up. It's actually the seniors who are resisting being told to plan a week ahead.
Of course they will.
So that's the challenge. We've got to install the discipline in them because what it means is they've got to start planning now so that the graduates can plan. And the outcome of that is that everybody works more efficiently, and it's a really useful outcome for the firm. Some of the challenges that graduates tell us about in their client interactions, clients just don't respond to my requests.
Well, they won't respond. They won't respond to a partner's requests either. So, in that case, they need to come back to you and communicate that to you, and you need again to help them transition through that process so they understand how to be persistent with the client, how to walk that fine line between being persistent and being rude. So, they need that guidance from you, and they need to communicate that to you proactively and take control of that and take the responsibility of that rather than you waiting for them to come to you.
And we all know sometimes it's a combination of verbal and written communication with client that gets the results. Sometimes even SMSs can do it.
Yep.
So training our graduates in developing those skills is really important, making sure that client understands that there is a team approach to completing the client work, and it's not the partner or the manager who acts as the sole filter between the client communication and the firm. We need to get our team involved in those discussions, and graduates can have a really important role to play. It also helps them get a better understanding of what's important for the client. So I think it's a fantastic engagement tool that gets the grad more interested in the client's circumstances and their issues rather than just the data that they have to process.
That's right.
The other key challenge in relation to this area is I get too busy and forget to follow up clients. To me, that comes back to process. Having a very clear process in place and agreeing on it, which says this is our process of following up clients for missing information. You will call or write to them in 2 or 3 times over a 2-week period. This is the process that we've got.
On a weekly basis.
If that doesn't work, then you'll come back and talk to me. We make sure that there's clear task reminders in place. Inevitably, when things get busy, what grads will tend to do and say is, I just got too busy or I forgot about it. And often you're back to the starting point with a client.
Well, then what you do is you communicate in the nicest possible way, but very firmly in your production meeting or whatever meeting you have, that your expectation is that the client be followed up every week for missing information or client queries, and they'll get the message before long.
So often it's really a case of having systems and processes and clear structure around a lot of these soft skills that are so important for developing efficiency. We certainly know in the highly leveraged practices that we work with, that's why they're so successful. That's why the graduates really take control of the workflow, because they understand exactly what they've got to do. The managers also, not surprisingly, have increased time to provide the coaching and support that's needed, because they're not madly running around doing everything.
Yes.
And trying to make up for the gaps that are appearing. So it's a catch-22, isn't it? We create more time through structure, and that gives us all more time to think about what we're doing.
But initially it takes extra time to change behaviours and put processes in place.
So finally, one of the biggest frustrations that managers and graduates have is repeated mistakes.
Oh, look, I was so guilty of that when I was a grad. I would never check my own work. And you know what, Dale, I've thought about it long and hard over the years as we're writing this material. And one of the reasons that I never checked my work was I didn't really know what to look for. So, I would think, I think I've done the right thing, but I was inexperienced, so I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't know what to look for. I'd look at it, I thought it looked okay, but I wasn't quite sure. So it's really important to have some sort of checklist so that grads can check their own work. And it also is important that we look at our own behaviour as managers and partners. I know I worked for a lot of managers and partners who would just fix the errors in my work, and they would say, oh, it's just quicker and easier to do it and less hassle. But I did come across one wonderful manager who I still talk to from time to time, and he's now a partner of a large firm in Queensland, and he cottoned on to that, and he would just give me back my work. So we need to help to put processes in place to support our grads in being able to self-review and to avoid repeated errors. So if they've made errors that they know they shouldn't make, don't even look at it. Just say, look, this isn't ready for review. I think you should take it back and have another look at it and check it yourself.
Yep. So those behavioural issues are really important. I also really recommend that you identify clear policies in place, like simple policies that we've outlined on this slide, and communicate those to your team so that there's a process you can go back to. If behaviour isn't consistent with the values and the processes, then you can say to your graduate, well, I can see you're having some issues. These are the agreed policies and procedures that we have in place. Can you give me some feedback on why you're struggling? What can we do to improve the situation? Put it back on them. Give them an opportunity to provide feedback and come up with the solution.
And if they say to you that, I'm sorry, I just don't have an eye for detail, well, then we know that maybe they might be in the wrong job, the wrong profession.
So some feedback we get from grads in relation to self-review, there's just too much pressure to finish the job. Well, that's the wrong thing to say, because it's the planning that actually results in a better result for everybody.
And
time saving and reduced write-offs, increased recoverability. Having said that, I can recall on quite a number of cases walking into firms and sitting down with managers and partners who also say, we just haven't got time to plan properly up front because we're too busy getting the work done.
Well, you need to make the time.
And in one particular case, I recall a firm like you, Dorothy, where the managers said, well, we've got 20% write-offs throughout the firm. You're now telling me to spend more time planning, so our write-offs are only going to go up. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
They're going to go down. They're going to go down through better planning. And our graduates need to understand that at an early stage of their professional development. Of course, it's taking some time to develop the skills, and of course, our graduates need to engage in their own professional development plan. They need to take responsibility for their own professional development, identify the gaps, and work to develop the skills, ask for support and feedback where it's required. But certainly in our online graduate program, a key focus is ensuring that the graduates take responsibility for their own professional development. It's not just the firm's responsibility.
No, that's right.
So some challenges. So they're in a very sort of quick, sharp form, the 5 key things that we need to focus on to help graduates take more responsibility and to make them more efficient. Some challenges that you'd be experiencing as graduates. Are your grads struggling to complete assigned jobs on a given time frame within the given budget? In a lot of cases, the answer is yes. But we need to put processes in place to reduce that and make sure that they're up and running as quickly as possible. Do your grads collaborate effectively with their managers to get things done? Do they proactive? Do they take responsibility for communication? In some cases, the answer is yes. In my experience, a lot of cases, the answer is no, until they feel that they've got permission, until the rules of engagement, the lines of communication are clearly understood, and that discussion needs to be had. Are you confident your graduates know how to communicate effectively with clients? Initially, the answer is probably no, but over time, with support, both formal and informal, they need to acquire those skills. The quicker we can encourage them and give them those skills, the more effective they're going to be within their time of training.
Let's review the 5 steps to improve graduate efficiency. Step 1. Ensure your graduates understand the scope of work and what to do when there's an issue. Step 2. Establish clear time cost budgets and WIP monitoring processes. Step 3. Train your graduates in how to manage their time and priorities. Step 4. Help them to take control of communication with clients. And Step 5. Establish a strong self-review process to avoid repeated errors. No doubt these are steps you're already trying to take in your practice and you're succeeding to a degree. The challenge is to actually formalise the process and really identify the strengths and weaknesses of your graduates and coach them in order to improve their performance. What should be the next steps in this process? I recommend that you assess your graduates in relation to these 5 areas of focus, then ask them for their self-assessment, compare the results, and then engage in discussion about systems, processes, and coaching requirements. Identify some smart actions that you and your graduates can take to improve the way that they manage their work environment. Finally, we recommend that you enrol your graduates in our online Reactive graduate program. This program is now running for its 10th season and will take place in February 2016. Presented over 4 sessions, we'll provide some really practical guidelines to your grads to help them take control of workflow and client relationships. There's real value in having an external perspective to this process, and we'll certainly make sure that through this 4-part program we give your graduates some clear guidelines in relation to budgeting and WIP management, workflow management, managing client expectations, and in relation to their own professional development. This program runs as live and recorded sessions, so your graduates can listen to the live sessions or they can listen to the recorded sessions at a time and place that suits them. The fee for the program is $800 plus GST, but we do have an early bird registration 2 for 1. In other words, 2 graduates for 1 until the 22nd of January 2016. The program is particularly suitable for new graduates and for graduates with up to 2 years of experience in a public practice environment. If you'd like further information on our online Reactive graduate program, please visit www.trainingbeyondaccounting.com.au and click on upcoming programs. Alternatively, don't hesitate to give us a call on 1300 883 789. Thanks for showing an interest in this session. If you do have any further comments or questions about how to help your graduates improve their efficiency, don't hesitate to contact us. Cheers. All the best.